All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I'm your host, Cardon with Cody Como, and today we are going to talk about a very important subject that I think hits home to a lot of the Yang Gang and, frankly, every millennial, which is now the largest voting bloc. We are the generation that was saddled with student loan debt, raised by a bunch of baby boomers and Gen Xers that said, go to college, go to college, go to college. We all thought that we were failures if we did anything else but go to college. So we produced this massive generation of people that wanted to go to college, but how do you pay for it? The government steps in, gives not a billion, but billions of dollars worth of student loans debt that now actually is trillions of dollars, creating an enslaved generation to student loan debt. And Andrew Yang now has made a proposal to what he calls remediate this problem. Cody, catch us up.
Yeah, well, one of the kind of first key things I want to touch on here is right away off the bat, he refers to his policy as reducing student loan burden. Not forgiving debt, not doing away with it, but just reducing the burden. He says student debt levels have exploded relative to other forms of debt over the past decade in particular. The key numbers I want to point out here. Education loans totals recently surpassed $1.4 trillion, up from $550 billion, roughly half, just from 2011.
I mean, that's more than we spend on our military,
well, I mean,
if I'm not mistaken.
It exploded from $90 billion in 1999 to $1.4 trillion today. I mean, the numbers have just gotten out of control. The average level of indebtedness upon graduation is up from $37,000, and there are 44 million student borrowers. So default rates have crept steadily up to 11%, and if you include delinquency rates, it's as high as 25%. This is limiting the group. This is limiting the growth of our economy and other stuff. Now, what he wants to do about it? As president, I will immediately reduce student loan payments for millions of Americans by ensuring that the American government does not profit 1 cent from its educational loan servicing and that students get the same interest rates as the wealthiest banks. Any profit that the government does realize will go into reducing rates the following year until profit is zero. Explore a blanket partial reduction in the principal of school loans.
Repeat that first part. What was his first suggestion?
Immediately reduce loan payments for millions of Americans by ensuring that the American government does not profit 1 cent from its educational loan servicing and that students get the same interest rates as the big banks. So, some pretty radical stuff there.
Okay, I get that, and that's understandable that he would want to reduce the profit incentive, which I think is consistent, at least intellectually. Now, by the way, just so you guys know, anybody that's watching this video, I am completely independent on Andrew Yang, and we are analyzing his platform, literally policy proposal by policy proposal, and approaching this with a fresh, clean slate. So I will admit that in this podcast, I'm going to formulate my opinion because I have a lot of knee-jerk reactions against this, but I also have a very liberal side of me that recognizes something has to be done. And I don't just want to be one of those people clutching their pearls saying something has to be done. We must engage in something crazy and drastic just because something has to be done. But this is an issue that does need to be addressed.
Well, and following in the lines with, kind of one of the reasons why we do kind of enjoy reading through Andrew Yang's policy proposals. One reason out there, most of the reason no one else running has proposals.
Yes,
so there's no other option out there. But he also, just to want to get to his next few points, doesn't propose, hey, I'm the smartest guy alive and here's the one size fits all. He proposes a few things here. For example, one would be proposing the 10 by 10 Student Loan Emancipation Act, a plan by which the federal government would buy student loan debt, negotiate rate with the private lenders, and allow students to opt into a plan to repay it through pledging 10% of their salary per year for 10 years.
Now, that's consistent with the Australian model. And Australia, yes, I understand it's basically California, okay? And we can't compare the United States of America to a country that's its own continent while only having the population of one of our states, all right? However, I have had many Australian friends from the Gold Coast, from Perth, from Sydney, and there your health insurance and your retirement are automatic, and I don't believe in compulsory automatic wage garnishing. However, if it's going to be automatic, it might as well be like the Australian model, only because they keep it below 5%. You go to college and it's much more affordable and you can engage in student loans, but then you basically sacrifice 2 some odd % of your paycheck in the future towards paying off that debt, and the same goes with healthcare. So it makes it so it doesn't hurt as much. And let me tell you, in a state that has a 54.3% marginal tax rate, Actually, I shouldn't even say marginal. I should just say top tax rate. If you make more than $250,000, I mean, that's wildly different. 5 and 54.3%. So I'm okay with this. Well, actually, I shouldn't say I'm okay with this. I'm okay with talking about this and at least fielding the argument. And I do appreciate that Andrew Yang is at least being emotionally consistent. If we're going to get up and say we need to take away the profit incentive of jailing people, like Bernie Sanders was talking about in the 2016 race, and we do have a problem with companies that profit off of incarceration being caught writing laws and submitting laws and lobbying to have laws changed so badly that if you actually watch Ava DuVernay's documentary, I believe it was on the 13th Amendment, it talks about how some of these laws written by these private incarceration companies got so blatant that there were legislators caught having submitted them as bills without having removed the company's letterhead on accident. Okay. So if you are going to take away the profit incentive that the government has to enslave a demographic, which is the claim against privatized mass incarceration, you have to be willing to take away the profit incentive that the government has to financially enslave an entire generation, which is the overabundance of student loan debt. Now, it's one thing if you're going to go out and get $250,000 worth of debt because you're going to end up being a trauma surgeon who's making millions per year.
This is one of the things I want to get to real quick in the last few minutes here is, again, remember, that was not the only thing he proposed. He also said, and this is something I found really interesting, was the idea of asking schools to forgive in part or in whole the debts of those who do not graduate. That is something I'm very, very, very much not for, because that feels like the definition to me of you take your student loan money, you go to school, you spend it on booze and vacation, and you drop out, and then I don't like, because that is the one abuse of student loans I do see on the student end. I know people personally who spent student loans majorly on booze or drugs.
Yeah,
or
and I've known
games,
people that have literally.
Stuff.
I knew a guy, he literally encouraged me to take out more student loan debt. And he says, look, dude, at the 5 to 8%, that's the cheapest loan you're ever going to get. Take it out and give it to me. He was an economics major. And he was taking out extra student loans so he could invest them in the stock market at an average rate of return of...
Invest them in the
stock market at an average rate of return of 14%. So he was making money off the government. But either way...
but here's one more I want to get to. Okay. This is something I'm more along the lines of supporting.
Wait a second. Hold on a second, Cody. I actually like, and I'm playing devil's advocate to you now, which is kind of weird. I kind of like the idea, at least I'd appreciate conversing about the possible ramifications of the idea of not punishing, but forgiving the student loan debt of somebody that doesn't graduate, because then all of a sudden the college's feet are held to the fire. Because the colleges themselves have ballooned the amount of administration that they've had. They've ballooned the amount of services they're going to get because they know that with these cheap student loans that we can get all this money. And if they don't graduate, so what? We made 3 years worth of money off this student. Whereas if all of a sudden they know they're not going to be getting that money unless the student graduates, then all of a sudden their efforts are put towards helping him graduate instead of trying to get money off of him.
Yeah, I mean, to me personally, that sounds a lot like the people and the state teaming up against the institutions.
And it sounds too much like central planning. Yes, I totally admit that.
I said, I literally know people who spent their student loan money on everything but books. They just they find the EPUB online of their textbook and not buy it and say, cool, I have $500 spent on booze. Like it's not the kind of thing where it just necessarily everyone is.
We are not endorsing EPUB or piracy.
I am, my bigger thing on that is the idea of, honestly, if they can prove in good faith a kid went to school, tried and just couldn't cut it, I'm definitely okay with some kind of fallback plan. People like that, right? They shouldn't, just because you were ambitious and said, I'm going to try and be a electrical engineer at like a very high level, and you failed, that you shouldn't be punished for it, right?
Well, no. I actually think that we don't say that about anything else in life. And I hate to sound cruel, we don't tell a business person, oh, you know what? If you just invest $50,000 of your savings and you try and start a company and it fails, you know what? Society's going to give you back that $50,000.
We don't give them the money back, but they file for bankruptcy and we wipe the slate.
Yeah, no, but
we say, you know what?
But bankruptcy isn't a reimbursement. And if you forgive a loan, that's basically a reimbursement.
Well, I mean, that's kind of people doing bankruptcy. They owe a lot of money and they file for bankruptcy and don't pay it back.
No. First off, there's multiple chapters of bankruptcy.
I understand
and one of
that, but what I'm saying is we do have programs in place for people who go out there in the world of business, give it their all, come up, belly up. There is something.
Yes, but there's a huge difference between bankruptcy. Forgiveness of a loan as compulsory by a government does not carry the stain on your credit score and on your future financial endeavors that bankruptcy does.
But like, I mean, I like I said, we can get into the nuts and bolts. I would say if a school said, hey, we're going to partially forgive 30% of your loan because you failed, I would say that's somewhat similar. Cause it's the same idea. Is there's systems in place for people who go for it and are not able to do it. That then we have something in place to say, we don't just say, you know what, you tried to run a business and it failed. Sorry, your life's over, man. There's no hope for you.
Okay,
we don't say that to people.
This is where I really want to start addressing the cultural problem. And I'm looking towards the president with a bully pulpit to really address a cultural problem. Marco Rubio, in the 2016 presidential election, said #truth, okay? That we have vilified the trades and blue-collar work to a point that children perceive it as a failure and that going to college is the only option of success. And then in a moment of glory, he said, the truth is our society needs more welders and not more 17th century German philosophers. And I really do believe that there has been a cultural expectation that has bred this financial and legislative problem. And if we're going to really take the fire extinguisher and point it towards the base of the flame is the cultural expectation of college.
How about this then? How about this one right here? He was proposing to close schools with high loan default rates and consistently low employment placement success.
Okay, I think that's a half fix towards addressing the cultural problem.
There would also be an expanded program that forgives debt of graduates who work in rural areas or with underprivileged populations. Again, so you can't just say, come to our school and we'll get you a job, and it's a job in the middle of nowhere that pays nothing. And there's one more I wanted to put on.
Well, let's talk the stats as you're looking that up.
Oh, sorry, one more. And police and prosecute all marketing representations of schools that might induce enrollment under false pretense. I think that's more along your lines. If they know for a fact, look, we have this great program, but if you complete it, the odds of you being enrolled in a gainful employment is little to none.
Yeah, like
they
these
can be
stupid majors.
Prosecuted for that. I mean, but here's the thing, though. At the same time, should we be able to go into a school and say, hey, you're only allowed to have 15 dance philosophy majors a semester?
No, but I definitely think that FAFSA, the federal government willing to front loans towards a seemingly endless sea of people that are not meant, a large majority of them, to actually go to college, is what has incentivized this massive explosion in stupid majors. And here's some stats, okay? 43 million Americans have student loan debt. This is according to CBS News. The average household with student debt owes almost 48 grand, okay? And 5.2 million of those 43 million currently are in default. They're in default, okay? And default over what? The most common majors in the United States of America now are no longer, okay, chemistry, math, pre-med, dentistry, things that we all can universally agree on require high levels of education. They're in the social sciences. They're literally breeding SJWs, okay? The leftist government is subsidizing to such a degree a massive army of students who, if we are honest with ourselves, are not smart enough to go and graduate in math, in science, in any of those fields.
I don't know if I don't know if not smart enough. I would just say the way of phrasing it is, if you
How about their aptitude?
Well, not even aptitude. If you go to most young people and say, hey, you want to take biology classes for the next 6 years, or do you want to take classes and stuff you're more interested in? They're going to say stuff I'm more interested in. I mean, I would say maybe flipping the switch.
Okay,
and
but
thinking
really,
of college as less as well. I think the issue we're seeing here is when you propose college to people as basically 13th, 14th, 15th, it's just part of your education. It's just after 12th grade, you go to 13th and it's a freshman in college. and then you say, okay, so it's a given you're going. When you go, what classes do you want to take?
Well,
most people aren't going to say, I want to take next level algebra classes. I want to take next level classes on film.
Well,
That's
isn't
what
that
happens.
what college is for? To really, okay, fine. And film, first off, knowing what I know about the film industry, just go and start making films. Don't indebt yourself $100,000
Well, hey,
to
I
go to
mean,
film school. It's
people,
useless.
I would do it. If I had the time and the money, I'd major in film history. I love that stuff. It's one of my favorite classes.
Okay,
I
but
ever
would
took.
you indebt yourself $100K to USC?
That's
in order
why.
to do
It's
it?
one of the reasons why I didn't major in film history.
No, okay, but hold on. But you made a cost-benefit analysis. You made a cost-benefit analysis, Cody, that said, I don't think the film degree is actually worth $100K in debt. Whereas these other people are making cost-benefits analysis and then are escaping the ramifications. And I got a problem with, hold on a second. I got a problem with leftist politicians breeding these indoctrination camps, because let's face it, academia has gone full-blown leftist, okay? You go down from the dean to the professors to the TAs of the majority of these social science majors, which are the majority of the bachelor's degrees that people get, and they're all leftist, raging man-hating lesbian gender studies person, raging capitalist-hating socialist economics teacher, raging, white male-hating patriarchy 101 teaching teacher, okay?
I mean, but where else?
Well, okay, but they can't just get a bunch of free money, breed an entire millennial generation of stupid SJWs.
Not free money.
And then say, oh, hey, yeah, it is free money if the student loan is forgiven.
No, but
the money is free if the tax man or the debt collector does not come and collect the debt. And that's what's happening. We've bred an entire millennial generation of SJWs who literally believe that government is the answer for everything. And why do they believe it? Because government gave them free money and the government's going to forgive the loan. What message does that send?
But I would say really the issue here is, and where we're seeing this become an issue, especially for young people, is like I said, a lot of young people are taught you're going to college. When you are a minor, for most young people that take on this debt, they've made
why aren't the parents that indoctrinated them in charge of actually paying back the student loans?
Most parents honestly just think that's okay. And my kid needs to go to college. What can I do to help
and
them?
most parents thought taking arsenic back in the 1880s was a good idea. And when their children suffered for it, the government didn't forgive that loan.
But should we punish the parents because they were just told this is a good thing to give my kids? And that's what I was told, so I did it? Is that like punishable? All I'm trying to say is, I would say as a nation, it's really important that our culture as a nation, we just come to the understanding that there's other paths and there's other ways of, being successful, and you don't have to force everyone to school, because I don't think anyone's evil here. I think this is what happens if the government says, hey, more people should go to school. That'd be good. And we're like, yes. And the schools say, yes, give us more people. That'd be good. Okay, we'll help out. We're the government. And then you create a system where the schools get to ask for more money every semester. I mean, tuition's gone up. I mean, I believe there was a study I want to pull up here, see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, it was a study done by a Jenna A. Robinson. The Bennett hypothesis turns 30, where she basically goes through and lists and says, look, because the government is getting into this stuff, if anything, increases in financial aid in recent years have enabled colleges and universities blithely to raise their tuitions, confident that federal loan subsidies will help cushion the increase. And when you have the pressure coming the other way from the federal government, a family saying school needs to be more affordable for my kid, easiest thing for the government to do is just say, well, let's give you money, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to come in and legislate tuition costs. Because that's the right. Is there any other option between legislating the cost of tuition and then just saying we'll subsidize tuition for you? I mean, what else is the middle ground?
If we start, first off, I love to use the word middle ground. I'm looking for middle ground, but I can tell you if we start forgiving student loan debt, I'm okay with messing with the interest and the profitability. However, at the same time, these private banks that agreed to purchase all of these loans agreed to a contract, and I believe that you should fulfill your contracts. So I do not want to see more millennials. Actually, we're out of millennial generation. Gen
hold
Z.
on. Well, something bigger than that I want to bring up really quickly. Americans older than 60 are saddled by student loan debt worth a whopping $86 billion, a figure that rose 161% between 2010 and 2017. I'll find the exact number here. It was the amount of Americans aged 65 or older who had defaulted on their student loan or parent loan debt is up from 362% from the previous decade. So I mean, it's a massive problem we're seeing. It's not just the millennials. I mean, there's grandparents who co-signed on these loans. There's people who went back to school after the financial crash that took out these loans. I mean, a lot of people are affected by this.
Yes, and so I want to see those people get help. I really think, just like Ronald Reagan said, the best charity program is a job. We need a robust increase in jobs that actually will last. I did get a degree. I got a bachelor's of arts in Spanish literature and poetry. Okay, I got one of those, as many would call it, useless majors. I don't call it useless.
Are you working as a Spanish literature major?
Yeah, it did cultivate the mind, but at the end of the day, I didn't make real money until I got my termite and pest control licenses and got the entrepreneurial spirit in my spine and started my own company. And that's when I actually really was finally able to buy a house, pay for my family, so on and so forth. So I really believe more that there needs to be a cultural change in America. Less students need to go to college. There needs to be a robust investment, because they're always using the word investment, not in throwing money at college or college debt, but increasing the trades, because as Marco Rubio said, we need more welders, not more philosophers. And I'm willing to entertain the idea of debt forgiveness, because we don't want to have an enslaved nation, but this needs to be a very well collectively bargained idea and rate between the banks and the governments, because I don't believe that the government should be able to go in and just tell the banks that have invested in these kids and done good faith investments that they're going to have to hoof the bill. Because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, this is part of the learning process. We have coddled the millennial generation into being a bunch of silly, stupid snowflakes that aren't ready for the real world. Why? Because we are constantly bailing them out in a way that no other generation got bailed out.
Whose fault is that?
Society.
No, I'm serious. Did the millennials raise themselves poorly? Are they at fault?
No. Yeah, it's horrendous parenting by the two most. And I'm sorry, but I'll bring this up: the two most liberal, as they self-describe, generations. You look at 67% of Gen Xers and 65% of millennials self-describe themselves as liberal. And we are now seeing the fruits of unbridled liberalism of the past 50 years. It's resulted in a massive debt where an entire generation is enslaved. And once their student loans are paid off, guess what? They have an average of over $50,000 of additional tax debt that the government has incurred on them from all of their loans from China and this constant 40% deficit.
Well, you know who's dealing with that currently as well?
What?
Just a little aside. We're running out of time here. However, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, running for president in 2020, he recently released some of his financial information, and he disclosed somewhere, let's see if I can find the actual number here. Here we go. Between $140,000 and $360,000 over the next 25 years in student loan interest. Woo! So that's somewhere, what's cut at the middle, $200,000 over 25 years in student loans.
Not Buttigieg, no.
Maybe that's why he's running for president, man.
Buttigieg is not going to be donating that $400,000 presidential salary to charity.
Yeah. But again,
he's going to be sending it to Sally Mae.
Again, though, one thing I just want to kind of highlight here, the interesting part about this. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue that the guy who's currently a mayor mayor of a city running for president is a failure. I mean, I don't think he's not one of those dumb millennials, but this is a guy who's doing well for himself. I mean, he's running for president, and he's still saddled with tons of student loan debt. It's a real thing out there that affects more people than just the dance history interpretation major who spent most of their money on booze and got out of school with no job. I mean, there's people that are doing stuff with their lives that are kind of crippled by this debt.
Yes. I have nothing but respect for the life choices of Pete Buttigieg. Sorry. And that's not to besmirch it. It's just a joke that he's definitely not going to be giving that salary.
But I just mean the idea of like this is an issue. It affects elderly people. It affects people that are successful. You wouldn't even consider millennials. I mean, it's easy to say millennials are dumb and they ran up debt, but I think the bigger problem here is the entire system has kind of just not been working. And, we can be evidenced by people.
So I'm not for forgiveness, but I'm okay with a renegotiation of the terms and so on and so forth to make it so it doesn't hurt. And I like half of what Andrew Yang proposes here. So subscribe, share this video to any of your friends that have student loan debt. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Got another video coming right at you. This is Problem Solver Politics.